Assemblymember Rogers, and then we're going to move on to looking at e-scooters, Assemblymember Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I actually had a number of follow-up questions around driver fatigue for Lorraine and John. I think some of them have been answered, but there are a few things if it's okay. So, Lorraine, you mentioned fatigue a number of times. How many times would you say, how often, when there is an incident involving a bus driver, how often is fatigue a contributing factor to that incident?
We don't have any stats on that because fatigue isn't recognised.
And when you say it's not recognised, what do you mean?
Like John said, you can't train a driver not to be tired. However, when you when you finished your duty and you go home, you've got a family that you're involved with. If you're a single parent, you've got the children to get sorted out, you've got shopping to do, you've got cooking to do. You end up with 5 hours sleep. None of that is taken into consideration. All we get told is get plenty of sleep. How can you get plenty of sleep when there's other things that you need to do? We need to reduce down the working hours, but give us a decent pay to cover the reduced hours that we're doing. They're talking about remote sign-on. And they're saying that remote sign-on can reduce down fatigue. How does that work out? I take the first bus out the garage in the morning at 4 o'clock. I have to drive my car to the depot. But when I finish driving and I have to then make my way back to the garage, because that's where my car is, this remote sign-on, we're not going to get paid for that. That's 7% deduction in our wages per year, but we're still basically working for the company because we've still got to make our way back to the garage. And we're fighting that. And nobody seems to be able to understand that fatigue is a big part of our life. We do get tired. We do get very, very tired. And fatigue, what I try to explain, because I'm quite a union activist, what I try to explain to people is fatigue is different from being tired. Fatigue, when you're tired, you can get a little nap. But when you're fatigued, it goes on, and it builds itself up to, you get things like headaches, double vision, you get backache, and I've done it. I've been so tired where I've approached a bus stop and I thought people was at the bus stop, and it wasn't, it was a poster with people on the poster.
So can you give examples of what systems, processes are in place to manage the kind of fatigue that you're talking about? For example, you must have minimum rest periods between shifts and things like that. And are those rest periods adequate, for example?
Right, we have 40 minutes. So if you're driving for 10 and a half hours, in between at some point in that, you can't drive for more than 5.5 hours. That is the European, I think it is the European directive. But when you get 40 minutes, and in that 40 minutes, you have to make your way from getting off that bus to get into a restroom or back to the not back to the garage, but to a restroom, wash your hands, go to toilet, go and get something to eat, or eat what you've brought with you. As you turn around, your 40 minutes is done. You have to get back, you have to go to the toilet before you get back on the bus, because if you're going to be driving for another 5.5 hours, there's no facilities, unless there's a garage on your route and you can stop, explain to your passengers, run in, use the facilities. It's all of those things that contribute to the fatigue, and to the only way I feel and my colleagues feel is reduce down the hours. But we can't take less hours. A lot of the colleagues actually work rest days. So when you work a 7 days straight, then you have 2 days rest days. You don't. Our colleagues will work that 1 day. So they do 8 hours straight, 1 day off. The shift pattern then changes from working late at night to working first thing in the morning. The whole contribution needs to be looked at. And
another question. Is there like a maximum distance you're permitted to live from your depot?
No.
So you could do a shift, say 12-hour shift or whatever, you could have an hour and a half commute back home, and then fit in your life, sleep, and then another hour and a half commute back the following day.
Yes.
And when you finished your shift, is there a minimum period of time that you have to have off before you sign on for duty
10 and a
again?
half hours.
10 and a half hours. Okay.
But that is 10 and a half hours from when you sign off. So if you spend 3 hours getting it, 1.5 hours getting into work, 1.5 hours getting home, then that's 3 hours out of the 10 hours, which makes it 7 hours. In that 7 hours, you have things to do.
Yes.
We're meant to sleep for 7 hours. They say get enough sleep. It's impossible.
So I'm conscious of time, so my final question on this. If you were to wake up and due to go in for a shift, but you felt so fatigued you thought you were unable to do that, would that be accepted if you rang up and said to your manager, I'm too fatigued, I can't come in?
They can't turn around and say, well, you've got to come in, but if you do it more than X amount of times, you will be disciplined and you will have no support. So it will be used against you. So we struggle to come in because we don't want it on our record, we don't want to lose our job, and we don't want to be disciplined. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Very useful, and we'll be picking that up in the new year. Let's look at e-scooters.